What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? Tonight's video is Jacob Pando. I don't know if you guys have seen him on YouTube or whatnot. Godless has made a few response videos to him, but today he's going to tell us why atheism is self-defeating.
So these are two long test tubes with two different types of chemicals, and then I pour this chemical into the other test tube to cause a reaction. Alright, now that is basically what our brain is if there is no individual, no mind, no spirit behind what this is, okay?
And so hopefully he actually makes a point in this video, or he actually talks about what he says he's going to talk about. Not exactly sure, haven't thoroughly watched it or whatnot, so you're getting a very fresh look at this video with my reaction, like my reaction's fresh, whatever. You get what I'm fucking trying to say, right? Okay, this is Jacob Pando. He definitely looks like he's a deer in the headlights right now, but don't worry, he'll find his footing here in a minute, maybe. All right, Jacob, please tell me why atheism is self-defeating.
Hello guys, Jacob here, and I want to follow up on a last video I made, which I called Questions Atheists Can Never Answer.
Future episode of Godless Engineer, I'm gonna go through that video as well.
And in this segment, or in that video, I talked about the chemical reactions in the human mind, okay? If there is no God, then the chemical reactions, the electric impulses, the fluids, the meat that's in our head is nothing more than that, okay?
I don't know what you mean by this. I don't understand how God actually factors into that, because there's no God, like chemical reactions are just chemical reactions. Like, how does God actually make chemical reactions more than just chemical reactions? It feels like you're wedging God into this situation when you just simply don't fucking need to.
Just think of having a chemical test tube, okay? Let's say you have a test tube with chemicals in it, and then you have another test tube with a different type of chemical in it.
Does anybody get the weird feeling that he's just holding little penises at this point, or is it just me? Oh, it's just me?
So these are two long test tubes with two different types of chemicals, and then I pour this chemical into the other test tube to cause a reaction. Alright, now that is basically what our brain is if there is no individual, no mind, no spirit behind what this is, okay?
You're saying that these basic chemical reactions are the exact same thing as what's going on in our brain. Regardless of complexity, chemistry is a very complicated subject, and I get that you're probably not a chemist. I'm just going out on a limb here, maybe, but you're not a chemist. I'm not a chemist either, but I do understand a lot of chemistry, and there's different reactions that happen. And the reactions that happen in our brain are not only more complex, but also different chemical reactions elicit different things that actually happen as a result. Just because our brain operates differently from whatever the fuck chemicals you just mixed up in your mind doesn't mean that God has to exist in order for this to produce something different than whatever the fuck these two little small penises mixed together made. Okay, so again, you're pushing God into a situation where you don't need God. We don't need God in order to explain the human mind. We understand basically how the human mind works. We do know that it's a lot of chemicals. Like, for instance, like if you're feeling sad or you're feeling happy, any feeling that you have is the result of different chemicals and different quantities mixing in your brain, causing these emotions to happen. Our brain operates in very specific ways, and just because it's only material and not supernatural doesn't detract from the awesomeness that is our brain, or the complexity that is our brain, or it doesn't detract from us being individual people or us having a mind. Like, it doesn't detract from any of that. It's just helping us explain why our minds operate the way they do. And God has literally no hand in it at all.
So whenever you have this chemical test tube with these two different types of chemicals reacting, when you hear the fizz, okay, let's say there's a reaction here, there's a fizz, does that fizz mean anything?
It means that the chemicals that you mixed up produce some kind of gaseous compound. That's what that means. For instance, when you have like bubbly soda, soft drinks, that's the carbon dioxide, the carbonation escaping out of the drink. I don't know what you're trying to say here. Obviously, you mix two things together, and adding the two things together produced all of these byproducts, and one of those byproducts is a gas. That's what happened. Just because in our brains the chemicals are different and they operate in a different way and they cause different reactions doesn't detract from us having a mind.
Does that fizz mean anything? Could you cause this reaction and tell somebody, hey, this means something. This means truth. This means morality. This means logic.
I don't understand why you would be pointing to like this chemical reaction that's happening and say, this is truth, logic, morality, and shit. All of those things are abstract concepts in the minds of humans. We made them up. Like they're abstract, so they're not material, but they're also not supernatural. This is a non sequitur argument. It doesn't make sense going from God to there, or like there not being a God to like, oh hey, look, here's this, and look, it's truth and logic and morality. Like, I don't know. It just seems like you're just jumping all over the place. Maybe try writing this shit down, having somebody proofread over it, and tell you how to make your points clear. Whenever I make a standalone video, instead of responding to fucking people, I make sure KC goes over my shit, because I can guarantee you half the fucking time she doesn't know what I'm trying to fucking say.
You can't do that, because it's just chemical reactions, okay? So the mind, our human minds, if there's no person, no personhood, no individual, no will, no intent.
For us as Homo sapiens, yes, we have all of those things because that's how our minds operate. Just because there's no God doesn't mean that, our minds would operate differently under, like a God existing. Like, I don't think that the two are connected. I don't see how the two are connected. I don't know. This is the best way on your level that I can explain this shit.
Behind this reaction here, okay? If there is no mind or spirit, then all it is this big glob of chemical reactions taking place, okay? And thus, just like that chemical test tube, we cannot presuppose that it is logical, that it has reason, that it has intent, that it can produce truth, is basically what I'm trying to say. You cannot say that it can produce truth or logic or morality.
Well, yeah, pouring two liquids together in some kind of penis test tube isn't going to produce any of those things because it's not a working mind. Those are different chemical reactions. Whereas the chemical reactions that are happening in our head can indeed produce those things because of how complex it is, by how the mind operates with its different portions. It can create all of these things. I still am not seeing this link between God and being able to reason our way to morality. There are several species out there that seem to show like moral attitude. Just because their brains operate differently than ours doesn't mean that they can't feel any kind of happiness or sense of morality or anything like that. They just operate differently. And I'm not seeing this connection to God. Like, I'm still not seeing it, Jacob.
Okay? You cannot say that something is immoral or not immoral, okay? You cannot say that because it's just a big bag of these chemicals reacting.
This is what you could call a false analogy. What he's doing is he's comparing random chemicals reacting to how our brain operates. You can have chemicals and they can operate and react in different ways, and they can actually produce like work and shit. They can actually do things that are beneficial for us. But just because they react in a different way doesn't mean that just because they react differently than our brains react, it doesn't mean that, the chemical processes in our brains, if God doesn't exist, then, it's just basically like having a head filled with soda pop. This is like the whole soda fizz argument that you see like Frank Turek and everybody else using.
What you can say, or you really can't say nothing, you can't make any truth claims because you must presuppose that logic exists in order to make a truth claim.
The logic as we know it is a human construction. Like, it's a human abstract thought or construction construction. So as we know logic to be, of course we have to presuppose it, because I mean we came up, like the human mind came up with it. Like this goes back to the whole you need God in order to use logic. Like there's a big fucking cloud right there in the middle of it that just says fucking magic on it, and then they're just like, yep, God's connected to logic via magical fucking clouds, and that's how they explain it.
Now this goes into another area of atheism, or another area of possibilities if atheism is true, because if this isn't about anything, right?
What do you mean it isn't about anything? Like our minds aren't about anything? I don't know what you mean by it being about anything. Our minds are about controlling our central nervous system and controlling all of the functions of our body. That's what our mind's about. I don't know what you mean by this being about something.
Then does that mean that we have a will? I mean, does this bag of chemicals control us, or do we control the bag of chemicals, or is it a combination of the two?
I'm not sure if you really understand how biology works. In case you don't know, our brain controls all of the systems in our bodies. Like, even the things that you don't think about, like breathing or your heart beating or muscles, contracting and everything like that. Like, I don't think that you understand, like, our brain, these chemicals, this bag of chemicals up here that's just woogie woogie woo up there, controls our body. And without all of that, you would be fucking dead. So I would have to say, yes, our brain controls our bodies, but our brain also has different cortexes and different areas that control different parts of our brain. That's why, like, if you have brain damage, you can actually change a person's personality. With amnesia, if someone gets amnesia, they could come out a totally different person. So yes, of course our brain houses all of that, and these abstract concepts like logic and free will and all this other shit is an abstract thing that is produced by the chemical reactions in our brain. There's nothing horrible about that. Like there's nothing that removes mystery out of life or removes any kind of the majesty of life with that particular fact. Knowing that that is the case actually helps me live a better life.
Do we have any control at all over our thoughts, over our reactions, over our emotions?
Okay, I think that you do have some control over thoughts, emotions, and all that other stuff. I think that obviously people can change. But I don't think that you necessarily can choose which thoughts you have. I don't think you can necessarily choose which emotions to feel. Now, you can choose whether or not to act on those emotions or those thoughts or whatnot, but I don't think that you can actively choose which thoughts to have.
And if we don't have any control, then people cannot be held morally responsible for what they do.
People can be held morally responsible for what they do because, like I said before, you have the choice of acting on certain emotions or thoughts, but you can't control whether or not you have those thoughts.
The idea of free will, or the idea of any type of will, is not logical. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. There would be no such thing as will.
Honestly, you're not making any kind of fucking sense in this video.
Whether it's determined or not, there's no such thing as will. Now, I'm not trying to get into the argument of determinism or free will. I'm just trying to make a solid point here, and that's that if we don't have any control at all over our chemical reactions in our heads, or over what we think, or over how we react, then how do we tell children, okay, kids?
I do think that you can control how you react to things. You can't control the chemical processes in your brain or anything like that, but you can control how you react to certain emotions and thoughts. I don't know who's told you that we can't control that, but we obviously can.
You got to learn self-control. There's no such thing as self-control if we don't have a spirit, okay?
Jacob, hold on a second. Jacob, on the doll, please tell me, where is your spirit? Is it here? Is it here? Is this where the spirit touched you, Jacob? This is where the spirit is, isn't it, Jacob? I swear to fucking Christ, I don't know where this spirit is supposed to reside. I don't know what connection this spirit has. To me, it seems like Jacob just says that the spirit is whatever causes us to be us. Like, that's our spirit. But as far as we know, like, supposedly spirits can't change, right? I mean, you can't change your spirit, can you? Or can you change your spirit? Because it wouldn't make a lot of fucking sense for, like, amnesia patients or patients suffering brain damage who come out totally different would have a totally different spirit. Like, I don't understand that physical connection to a supernatural thing. It would be helpful if you could actually explain that, but I'm guessing that you don't have any evidence for a spirit or this connection to our physical bodies with the spirit, because if this brain right here is nothing without this spirit or this supernatural thing, then why is it that when you change attributes about the brain and the brain chemistry, then your spirit fucking changes? To me, it just, at that point, the spirit just seems kind of tacked on and like an ad hoc assertion, you know, just like a post hoc assertion. It seems like the brain is the spirit, and the brain and the spirit are one because they are the same thing. It's just your brain, Jacob.
What is self-control if there is no ability to have a will or intent behind these emotions, these reactions in our head? Okay, now don't get me wrong, this has nothing to do with your memories affecting what you will do next. Okay, this is just the simple practical belief that if we do not have a will or intent or mind or anything like that, then how do we have control over our emotion? Now the reality of things is that we can see that we do have control over our thoughts, over our reactions, at least partly. Okay, we can control how we react to someone by learning. Okay, we learn from certain situations and we learn to have self-control. All right.
Okay, I feel like you're just speaking in circles at this point because you don't know how to actually make sense of what you're fucking saying. This is pretty much what I've been harping on the entire time, that of course we can learn self-control. We can learn a lot of things, and I could spew a whole bunch of like information about learning or learning theory or anything like that. Could have done a lot of research on it. But it's such a complex subject that I really don't think that I need to go into that particular subject in order to debunk whatever the fuck you're going around in circles about right now. Because obviously we can learn self-control, and obviously self-control is attainable. It is something that's controlled by the processes in our brain. And like I said before, if this supernatural spirit or connection to God or anything like that is really there, then why is it that our physical body seems to change it? Like, changes to our physical body can change our spirit?
That is what the spirit is. It's the idea of having control. It goes beyond chemical reactions just taking place randomly. It's the idea of actually having control. You're the admin of this body here. You're the
faith is having that control, or being able to control our bodies and our thoughts and everything like that. I really don't see this in like the practical real world, because like psychopaths, it's not like they choose to be psychopaths or sociopaths or people with depression. People with depression don't choose to be fucking depressed. I have depression. I deal with it. I struggle with it on a daily basis. I don't choose to fucking do that. It's just something about me that I have to deal with, and I've done a lot of personal growth in order to deal with it. But that was me doing the work. These fucking chemicals in my brain, which you seem to boil down to just these simple chemical reactions happening, when it's actually a complex system in our brain. I really don't think that you understand how complex the brain is and how complex the chemical reactions are that go on in our brains.
Spirit, the mind. But in an atheist worldview, there's no such thing as that. There's no such thing.
Okay, so for one thing, there is no atheistic worldview. I'm guessing what you mean is just a common worldview held by other atheists, or all atheists or whatnot. And even that is really not provable, because we all have different worldviews. Under the auspice that God doesn't exist, those things definitely do exist. I've been explaining this entire time how they still do, and how you haven't actually been able to connect these particular things to like there needing to be a God. Like, it's just a total non sequitur argument that you're presenting here.
It's just another contradiction of reality, okay? Now people say, well, it's just the reality of things. We can see that things have purpose. We can see that one reaction leads to another, okay? Yeah, but that's just because you say it's the reality of things doesn't mean that it supports your worldview. In fact, it supports the worldview of someone who at least believes in a spirit. in a God, in a higher power, okay?
I mean, come on, Jacob. You're not presenting any kind of new arguments here or anything like that. You're just presenting old apologist arguments, and I don't know if you just don't fully understand how to, like, convey those particular things, or if you're just trying to regurgitate and you're finding yourself just talking in circles. I'm not sure, but I would love for you to make another video where you speak in a not so roundabout fashion.
Because they do not want to address the solid answers I gave in my previous videos.
He didn't give solid answers, or he didn't explain the link between God, logic, and all that other kind of shit. He just presumes that God is needed for those things, and it's more of a presupposition that he makes. And so he's like, oh, well, prove me wrong, motherfuckers. Huh? How does this make sense? It doesn't. So, boom, debunked. Sons of bitches, atheists and shit.
Just check out those other videos, alright, before you comment down this video, and you have a blessed day.
Okay, Jacob, thank you. I will definitely try to have a more blessed day than I started off with. I don't know what a more blessed day actually looks like or is, but I will try to have a blessed one.
I have you.
Thank you, heathens, for making it to the end. I would love to hear your thoughts on Jacob's questions that he lays out here, or his statements. I would love to hear your ideas on them down there in the comments below. While you're down there, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.